crisis moves theology from third person to second person. And we're doing a series on Psalm 23. And in verse 4, David shifts his language from, the Lord is my shepherd, and he shifts it to you and your rod and your staff.
Hey friends, Tom Henderson here, and I want to welcome you to the RESGEN Giving Life podcast, where we have helpful and meaningful conversations about being a man whose life in Christ gives life to others. Before we get into our episode today, I want to remind you that RESGEN has a couple of big events coming up at the front end of 2026. First of all, we got Date Night Comedy on January 16th at the Washington Pavilion in downtown Sioux Falls. This event is a super fun night filled with laughter and encouragement, with many couples saying that it's their favorite date night of the year. Joining us this year is my good friend and crowd favorite Ted Cunningham, along with illusionist, comedian, and America's Got Talent winner Dustin Tavella. So you are going to definitely want to make this night a priority on your calendar. Then, in February, is the 10th anniversary of the RESGEN Men's Summit. And this year, I'm very excited to say that we are taking it to the Denny Sanford Premier Center for our biggest event yet. Joining us for the day will be John C. Maxwell, Tim Tebow, Sammy Adaby, comedian Johnny W. It is going to be a phenomenal day. So I want you to join thousands of men. Make that day a priority, just as you're going to do a date night. Make that date a priority and think about who are you bringing with you, okay? We've got a lot of seats to fill, and we have opportunity to reach thousands of men for Christ, and I need your help to do it. So think about who are you going to bring with you to the summit. After you listen to the podcast today, don't delay. Head to resgen.org and get your tickets for both events so that you ensure that that's on your calendar and you're ready to rock with us. All right. Well, today on the podcast, I'm being joined by a dude who's been a friend of mine for over 25 years now. Brian Stroh is a husband, he's a dad, a pastor, and a fellow Maxwell certified speaker, trainer, and coach who has devoted his life to serving others, helping students and adults grow in their faith, and encourage people to lead themselves well. And on today's show, we're going to talk about a lot, okay? Because when you have a dude like Brian on the pod, you want to make sure you cover as much ground as possible. So that said, Brian and I are going to talk about leadership. We're going to talk about marriage. We're going to talk about parenting. We're going to talk about growing in our purpose and our faith, and about trusting in God when challenges arise. I'm also willing to bet that there may be a few stories that are told about our time playing tennis together at the University of Sioux Falls. I'm pretty sure those are going to find their way in their conversation. But anyway, without any further ado, because we got so much good stuff on our way, you can already hear him laughing to my left. Let's not wait any longer. Brian Stroh, welcome to the Giving Life podcast.
Thanks so much, Tom. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, dude, listen, here's the thing. Sometimes there are guests on the pod where professionalism is at an all-time high for me. The guests always bring their level of professionalism, but sometimes sometimes I feel like my professionalism goes out the window, especially when there's dudes here that have known me for so stinking long, right?
Seriously, same.
So, dude, I love how long we've known each other, the ways that our lives have been woven together in so many different ways. So before we get into really talking about all the stuff that I just talked about in the intro, I'd love for you just to introduce yourself because, for some, this will be an introduction to who you are.
Absolutely.
And so I'd love for you to intro yourself, and then we'll get rolling.
Yeah. Thanks, Tom. I think you pretty much covered it. I've been married to Tarina, my high school sweetheart, for 26 years. We have 4 kids. 2 are off the payroll, I like to say. So our oldest is down in Phoenix teaching math, and he's married. And then our middle son works for Howe Heating and Cooling here in town. And then we've got our youngest son is in college in St. Paul, and then our daughter's a senior in high school. So
yeah, and congratulations on finally getting one of your kids to go to our alma mater.
Yeah.
I mean, both of my I did my part. Both of my boys went in there, and it was so funny because you just sensed I think Charina had sent the picture of whatever brochure.
Yeah, we just saw Isaiah in the with his long Jesus hair,
That's right. So, his long hair, please. Right. And so I just said, listen, shouldn't we be getting an NIL letter for that? I mean, you talk about having your kids off the payroll, which I want to talk to you about that. That sounds like a pretty good deal. But where's that NIL bill for us? That's
exactly,
what I want to know.
Exactly. Yeah, no, Kinsley just decided to attend USF actually the last couple of weeks. And so she's the first of our 4 that even wanted to visit.
Okay.
I mean, all the guys, they wanted out. They wanted out. I don't know if that's good, bad. I mean, there's probably some bad to that, but they were gone and wanted to look elsewhere. But we're really glad she chose the coup and couldn't be happier for her.
Yeah. That's super awesome. And then in addition to all of that, so you've been also an associate pastor, executive pastor, youth pastor. I mean, you've been all the hats at Hillcrest for how many years?
I've been in Hillcrest since 2002, so 23, 24 years.
Yeah, pretty much like right after you graduated college and seminary. Were you still in sem like when you started there?
Yeah, I went to USF, graduated in 2000, was at Trinity Baptist, intern there until my middle year of sem. So, seminary back then was, kind of like law school, like 3 years and 90 credits. It's not this distance thing. And
like that. I get what you're trying to say is you're like, Tom, your master's subpar.
No,
subpar.
Better timing.
Okay. All right, dude. Well, hey, listen, message received. All right. So, so you've got a lot of hats that you wear, and that you have worn, throughout your life. And really, since the time we've known each other, but before of like being in full-time ministry, which basically, I mean, we've traveled some similar roads.
Correct.
And that we both, been in full-time ministry. You and I both believe that no matter what you do for a vocation, we're all called to ministry, as followers of Jesus. But we have been, what I feel like is lucky enough that God has allowed us to be in full-time ministry. But prior to that, you first had to make a personal decision to follow Jesus yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And so was that for you something that was just kind of like, that's all you've ever known? Was it something like, because some people will say, I don't know that I have this specific moment,
Correct.
Right? But tell me a little bit just about your faith journey and then what led you to be in full-time ministry.
I grew up in a Christian home, and I mean, the older I get, the more it's like what you're saying. Like, I can't remember a time not following Jesus, but mom and dad, we were churchgoers on Sunday mornings, Sunday nights back in the day, Wednesday night youth stuff or children's stuff. I remember my mom, I was 4 or 5 years old. She had my brother and I, and was just leading devotions at night. And I don't remember the devotional, but just asked us if we invited Jesus into our heart. And my brother and I were like, yeah, let's do it. And so I think he was 4, I was 5. Baptized third grade with my brother and then my first cousin as well, which is kind of a cool thing. And going to church camp up in North Dakota and sensing that call to ministry pretty early, summer my sophomore, junior year. I can remember Steve Miller was a pastor in the Dakotas, and he gave a call, and I stood up, and the rest is history. So,
wow.
Yeah.
So did you have any full-time ministry aunts, uncles, like in the Stroh roots at all?
Well, my dad's oldest brother, not his oldest brother, but one of his older brothers was a pastor in our denomination, and then was a regional minister in our denomination. But he's 20 years older than my dad. And so he had kind of semi-retired by the time I was, but his sister, my dad's sister, was a missionary to Africa for 3-4 years and then came back stateside. And so we've got some of that service in our lineage. And then Tarina, my wife, her dad and her grandpa both pastored in our denomination. So there is that little bit of a family job or family gig.
Right.
So,
and did you guys meet at the coup, or did you actually meet like at summer camp?
we met at Bible camp.
That's what I thought. Here's a camp romance.
Yes.
That lasted.
Yeah. Tarina's got letters dating to when we were like elementary kids, but I was chasing somebody else and she was chasing JC Donner, if you remember JC.
Oh yeah, dude.
So
yeah. She went from a Vikings fan to a Packers fan.
Yeah. Well, Vikings couldn't do a solid yesterday, could they, Tom?
No, they haven't done a solid really all season long, that's for sure. But we don't need to necessarily talk. We talk about how the Lord is with us in the challenging times of life, Brian, and this is
yesterday one of the rare times I'm cheering for your team. They can't, and then I get to experience what you all experience apparently. So
just being bummed all the time. Yeah, exactly. And our old tennis coach from college, which again we'll probably end up diving into some of that. Of course, he's a Bears fan, and they were at the game.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. So they got to see.
So he's happy then.
Yeah, so he was happy, and at his age, I just like to keep him happy. 'Cause that's what I was telling him. He always, which that's not talking. He's always like, I'm next to dead. I mean, that's what he said. But which is such a fun relationship as well. I mean, obviously, Jeff Nelson has been such an important part of both of our lives. And now for him, I mean, he's been with RESGEN doing just all the stuff with us now for almost 10 years. So it's been really, really fun.
I'm not sure how you guys get anything done.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
so.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Sometimes that is true, but we also like to keep ourselves moving forward. And so he likes to call me to task on some things too. But, so I want to talk real quickly about something that I've always admired about you. And that's that you've always had this steady presence to your life. I mean, you've just always had this vibe of like, it's kind of like back when I worked at TGI Fridays, we had these theories that you had to do as a server. And one of them was like the duck theory. And it's always in leadership stuff as well, as like, if you see a duck on the water, it just looks like it's just completely like floating and everything just looks like really nice. But then under the water, its feet are going nuts, right?
Sure.
But you've always had this steady presence with who you are, this attitude of serving other people, and this level of intentionality. It's just, I mean, ever since I've known you, that's kind of just what I've seen. So has that always just been the case, or is that something that you've had to teach yourself? Was there mentorship in your life? And I'm assuming that doesn't come as news to you what I just shared, that other people have shared that as well. But I'm just interested in how, and we're going to get a disc and a lot of stuff that you do with your stuff that you do in companies too. But like, has that always just been a part of your life?
I think so. I'm the oldest of four. And so my brother is 11 months younger than I am. And I got two sisters, 7 and 9 years. And even growing up, there was this voice in the back of my head, like, you got to watch out for, my bro, or watch out for your family. Or mom and dad would go out and, you're in charge, or that type of thing. And so there's that sense of responsibility, I think, that's been kind of baked in since I was young. My mom taught school for 41 years, 42 years. My dad was at his job for 30 years he did inbound sales for an electrical wholesaler. And so very consistent presence. We were at the same church for most of my life. And so, yeah, we didn't jump around a lot. We didn't move. We moved one time in 17 years, 16 years. So yeah, that's kind of been just baked into who I am. And then, the church ministry life, that can be a good strength. It can be a detriment at times too, because you don't want to change, or you get so stuck in our ways. I think sometimes my faith background or denominational background can get a little stuck and a little resistance to change. And certainly with my personality, I don't like to change if I don't have to. So yeah, there's some good and bad to that. But I think that's part of that intentionality, or part of that consistency.
Yeah, because which actually explains a lot. I didn't know that you had only moved one time when you were, a kid, and because you've lived in the same house in Sioux Falls. I mean, really,
We have.
I mean, the entirety of your marriage,
Pretty much.
and you've been at the same church, which is always something that's interesting, because like we live in a world where church shopping is the thing.
Correct.
As people that like attend a church, but also even in the pastoral ranks, where it's kind of like, hey, I'm going to now go be a pastor at this church. I'm going to go to that church or whatever. But I remember when I was a youth pastor in Oregon, prior to the Lord moving us back to Sioux Falls, I remember hearing a tape series. Okay. So if there's any younger listeners out there or viewers, we actually had tapes that you put like in a tape deck, in the car or whatever. And I don't recall who it was from, but it was a tape deck, a tape series and the title was Pastors Who Stay. And it was all about longevity, in not just in ministry, but in the same, within the same body of believers and within the same church. And so I'm interested in knowing for you, Brian, and I think that it does explain a little bit that, hey, you know what, if you don't have to change, why change and all that, but what has longevity, not just in ministry, but longevity at one church, what has that done for you personally? And then what would you say that's been able to do for people that call Hillcrest home?
Personally, Hillcrest it's an amazing community it's been an amazing community for us, for our family. We love it there. We love the people there. They love us. They care for us well. It's to the point where we're like family, and we can joke, and not everything is always so serious, or so like this is the hill type of stuff that you can see in church. And then, personally and professionally, it's given me, or given us, some ability to be able to serve here in Sioux Falls, and then also look elsewhere and see where we could serve or make an impact. More than most, churches will get really excited about something, and rah, 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 and then a year or two later, it like fizzles out, or like,
Yeah.
"Hey, we used to do that, or we used to go to this, or we used to be this." And I think one of the benefits of being somewhere for quite a while is, we can see some of that stuff through. We've seen some stuff through. We haven't had to leave and wonder how that project or that ministry or that nonprofit that we supported is going. And then it's also given us some trust to take on some new things and see how those things go. And we not bad at 1,000 or whatever. Like, we
Yeah.
made a lot of mistakes and missed on some things, but when you're consistently showing up to a people and to a place, and consistently showing up in the community, I think you get some leverage maybe that you wouldn't get if there's this sense you're going to go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in that, the family type vibe is definitely real. And I mean, even, my son, Isaiah, you already mentioned him, he had the opportunity just by, your graciousness of welcoming him into the Hillcrest family, and leading the youth there for a couple of years, and not even just, that, but I mean, adopting him into your family, and which has been, I mean, a huge blessing,
Well,
for Laura and I, to have somebody else be pouring into him the way that you and Tarina did, and obviously your kids, and now with Charlie up there,
it's
in the cities. I don't know if Charlie's studying, because I don't know how many concerts he's going to with Isaiah, but
well, listen, it's win-win, right? Because as a dad, as a leader in ministry too, you want people pouring into your kids, to your guys. And there's things that, there's things you would say, and they're like, what does this guy know, right?
yeah,
But if, like, your kid Isaiah says the same thing to my kid, it's like,
yeah,
I mean, it's like gold.
Yeah,
Right. So
yeah.
we need people in that. And I would almost feed. I don't think I ever fed Isaiah stuff, but there were times like, "Hey, could you?"
You could have. I did that with you. I was like, "Hey, could you tell Isaiah this? Tell Isaiah to call his mom. How about that? No, whatever."
And just yesterday, seriously, just yesterday at church, kid behind me brings up Isaiah. He's like, he didn't know him. He started coming after Isaiah a lot, but it's like, apparently he's the GOAT around here. I'm like, that's the kind of impact that
Yeah.
that kid had on our youth and on our families and on our students. So,
well, it was such a formative time in his years, and figuring out, we talked about the call to full-time ministry. I mean, it was even through that process. He's like, "Dad, I don't know if I'm called to full-time ministry right now. I mean, it maybe someday in the future." But it allowed him to cut his teeth and work in different areas of the church too, because of course a lot of that, I mean, with Hillcrest being the way that it's structured, he was able to preach, and he was able to do hospital visits, do all the things,
set up chairs.
Ministry, that's the stuff that's not the quote unquote glamorous parts of ministry, right? So then talk with me about your transition. Not so much transition, but like when you decided that you wanted to be able to impact people outside of the church, specifically in the ways of corporate. Because, I actually, when I first started even thinking about getting connected to the Maxwell Leadership Organization, it was just kind of this idea I had. I don't really recall exactly how it, like there was a few conversations that I had with guys like Jordan Montgomery and Chad Johnson, Maxwell's chief of staff, and so forth, but I didn't know really anything about it, except for you were a part of Maxwell Leadership, and you were already certified, and you had long since, and we'll probably get into this a little bit later maybe, but you've long since said, "Hey, we want to make sure that we're serving people," going back to your heart for service, serving people outside of the church walls that may never enter into our church on a Sunday morning. or on a Wednesday night for youth or kids or whatever. And so you've done things as a church, like adopting schools and neighborhood cleanups and figuring out how do we bless families that are in need and whether that has any impact on them coming to church or not, right? So you've always had that bent to you. But then you start saying, well, how do I grow in my own leadership and then invest in companies? So for you, when did that begin to really start to be something that became a focus for you? And then where you'd step out and say, oh, I think this is something that I do want to do.
That's good. You kind of summarized it really, really well. In 2007, 2008 at Hillcrest, as a leadership team, we asked ourselves a question. We said, if we were to stop being a church, would anyone give a rip? Would anyone notice? And what we meant by that was obviously the people who were attending and our members, they would care. We supported some missionaries and missions. They would probably care. But like, would the person across the street, would the public school a mile away from us, would the nonprofits that were just starting to do really good work, would they notice? Would they care? And we had to be pretty honest and say, I don't think anyone would really notice outside of our own inner circle. And so we had purchased, before this, we had purchased some land on the east side of town off of Highway 11 next to Frankman. And the desire was to, sell where we currently are and kind of build a new building and that Field of Dreams, right? Like if you build it, they'll come type model. And then we just wrestled with God for about a year and a half going, it's just not sensing what God was calling us to do as a church and as a people. So 2008, it's the recession. And we decided to put that land up for sale and hopefully we would get back what we put into it. We ended up doing really good on that and making a commitment to pay off our mortgage on our existing building and then give away the rest of the funds. And so that's where the connection with Cleveland Elementary started. That's where we've done some adoption and foster care. We've helped 35 kiddos get adopted through our families. And then we've done some stuff internationally too, both in Sudan and Ethiopia. And that's when just this sense of church has got to be more about than just what happens Sundays or even Wednesdays. And I didn't necessarily grow up with that perspective. I grew up, Sundays were very important. Wednesdays were very important. What you did Fridays, Saturdays, not so important. Yeah. So this idea that your faith is more than just what you do when you're in the building. Then, fast forward to COVID happens in 2020, really interesting time, I think, for all of us, but certainly within churches and just what's happening politically, what's happening culturally, what's happening in terms of are you open, are you closed, all these types of things that church leaders, especially senior pastors, had to deal with. And then just this sense, like I feel like I can, I don't want to say contribute more, but contribute differently. Just
I like that.
Make a different contribution while not having to give up what I'm currently doing. And so I knew of John and his books. I knew of John as a speaker, but I didn't know he had a program until I just literally Googled John Maxwell and then saw like coaching. I'm like, what is that? Talked to program advisor and been figuring stuff out since. So yeah.
So when did you decide though because doing that, it's an investment. It's an investment in yourself. And it's not a small one. I mean, it's a pretty healthy investment. And you have to have the courage to do that. And so sometimes I think that within us as people, we fight newness. We already talked about that. We fight the fear of, well, what if it doesn't work? The fear of failure. What if this doesn't, the ROI on this isn't very good, or what if I don't have what it takes, or whatever. So how did you battle all of that and then say, no, I'm going to do it? And because I didn't know anybody else in this area that has done that. But you stepped out. And so what did you have people in your life say, hey, Brian, I really think that is you, like, or is it just something that you and Tarina said, hey, or is it something that Tarina's like, are you sure? So
Yeah, I mean, I had conversations with Trina. I had conversations with Pastor Doug Bartell and our board, and just saying, I'm thinking about doing this. And they said, great. On the church side, they said, we kind of want in on some of that. So if you're going to do this out here, could you do some of that in here? I'm like, well, of course. Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be, either or type thing. But, in my role, basically in that second chair, that administrative executive role, I don't have to do a lot of start from scratch, right? I'm executing someone else's vision or our shared vision or our board's vision. That took some time to really like start something, right? Or to quote sell something or whatever. And so, yeah, I'm not there yet, but I have learned a ton.
Yeah.
What's worked, what's not worked. In the program, in the Maxwell training, they teach you these different tracks or different things you can do. And one of the things they suggest doing is like a lunch and learn, just do a free, learning opportunity for a company or for an organization. And my second one, the first one went pretty good. Second one is at a media company, and there's like half in the room and then half are virtual, right? They've zoomed in from wherever. And I just bombed it. Bombed it so bad that I'm like, I'm going to get out of here. Like, can I get out of here any faster? and the owner is like, let's go around the table and, one takeaway type thing. I'm like, oh gosh, get me out of here. And so people are being nice, but this one dude, he's not going to let me have anything, right? He's like, says nothing. And then finally he's like forced to say something. I'm like, oh my gosh. But, the next, actually 2 days later, Trina's like, how did it go? I'm like, it sucked. She goes, no, I'm sure it was the audience. I'm sure it was the room. And then, Maxwell teaches us, like, you gotta take responsibility for everything, right? You can't blame it on the crowd or blame it on them. And I'm like, no, that was me. I missed something. 2-3 days later, had another one that went well. And I think that's life, right? That's leadership. That's work. That's relationships. I don't think you always get it right every time. Hopefully you got another at-bat coming up sooner after you don't do as well as you'd like. But yeah, that's
well, and there's a reality that you have to face is that, because we all have times, right? And no matter what line of work you're in, and I think about, people that are out there and listening or watching and we've all had situations where we go home at the end of the day and we are like, wow, that was not great. Yeah. that I'm not sure I should show my face, there, whatever. Like, I totally bombed that deal, or boy, I messed up this, this project or whatever. But if we look at how most of our learning takes place, it's often that failure or wanting to do something better is often our greatest teacher.
Exactly.
Right. And so, but we have to be willing to take a step. We got to be willing to take a chance and take a risk on ourselves. And I think that there's, and the older we get, sometimes the harder that is. And the more we just want to, protect ourselves or stay safe.
Yep.
And so I even think about how we then can project that onto our kids.
Yes.
And so, for you, as you think about just the journey that you've been on in your leadership growth, in order to lead other people well, you got to lead yourself well. What are certain things that maybe, if they're mental hurdles you had to jump or barriers that were kind of just set up that you had to get over? And then what have you learned in the process that you hope that your kids have learned in the process as well?
Well, I think you really hit on it at the beginning, like this idea of choosing yourself, and I don't mean that in a selfish way necessarily, but I think like with my kids and sometimes within our culture, we're waiting for people to pick us. We're waiting to, we were back on the playground, right? I want to go number one at the kickball team. Or,
Yeah. I never did. I never got.
Nah, I never, well, I never did either.
So that's right. I also really didn't get picked for the tennis team, USF either. That was just for the participation grant because we needed a spot, which listen, we'll get to that. I promise we will get to it. But going back to, I love what you did. So I don't want to derail that. So I want to get back to that. So we love to be picked.
Yeah.
So continue that thought because I like where you're going.
You just want, you want that coach tapping you on the shoulder, right? And saying, hey, would you join this team? Or we want you to come out. Or you want that teacher saying, hey, apply for this or do this. And sometimes we have this sense like, well, if someone didn't pick me, then I must not have it, or I must not be good enough. And maybe that is, there can be certainly some truth to that,
Sure.
right? You know, if someone's not recognizing or seeing that gift, for sure, maybe that you don't have that. But sometimes it's just saying, hey, I'm going to try. I'm going to go out. And I think for me doing this, I told myself I was going to start the coaching thing because the kids were older and we weren't, gone every night at their stuff. And we had some more capacity, right? We had some more ability to do that. But it's also given me some opportunity to live out what I would tell them. Like Dad wasn't just, telling them to, put in some more reps or try harder or practice harder or whatever that might be. Like, no, I'm actually doing this over here. And I've won some and I've lost some and I didn't get picked for something, but I did get picked for something. And so I think that's been a way to, I guess, casually share that with them.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that I had to battle through, I think it's just natural for us to compare ourselves with other people.
Oh, for sure.
For sure. Compare, whether it be speaking ability or church size or, whatever, right? We live in a world full of comparison. And I remember when I first stepped into that Maxwell leadership space, and I had to really fight this battle within me of trying to compare myself with these other people. And almost at our last gathering that I was just at earlier this year, Chad asked me to just kind of share just kind of what I've learned through all of just the coaching and the training that I've received and how it's helped me personally.
Yeah.
But then how it's helped others, because again, as we get poured into, it's our job now
Correct.
to pour ourselves out. And I said, what's been interesting is the first time I entered a space like that, I felt like I needed to prove that I belonged in that space.
Mm-hmm.
But yet now it's no longer that. It's just, I want to come and I want to continue to grow myself so that then I can continue to help grow other people.
Help us.
So how have you personally, how have you personally fought the temptation of comparing yourself? Because I think that's one of the biggest battles I think we face as just people in general.
Oh yeah.
So coach me us for a second, Brian. Listen, this is a way for me to get a free coaching session.
I don't know.
But so let's just say you're walking somebody through the comparison trap, or what have you done that's been helpful for you?
I don't know that I don't know that I'm there yet. You've mentioned, you've mentioned the resource, that book, The Gap and the Gain. I've really enjoyed that book too. And looking at it, not from a sense, and I still fall into the trap, right, of looking at how much further I'd like to go or what I'd like to do or what we'd like to do, but rather looking back and going, okay, maybe this thing didn't go the way I wanted it to go, but goodness, you were in the room, or you had this opportunity happen, or you even had the opportunity to even be considered for something like that. So it's really trying to look back and using that as motivation to grow or to keep going. And then it's looking at people, honestly, like yourself, who I feel are further along a certain path and going, it not only, is it possible, but not to be jealous of that, but to be encouraged by that, that this person's they've traveled the path further than you have, or they've done, again, I don't want to say done more, because that can get into the, hustle culture and stuff like that. That's not necessarily what I'm saying. But I think, back to the kids, not just my kids, but just kids in general, this sense like you haven't put enough in to get to that spot yet.
Yeah.
You know, you're in a position, RESGEN's in a position to fill the Premier Center next year because of the last 9 years' works. You know, for sure, God willing,
Yeah.
Lord willing, you know, Spirit moving, all that
Yeah.
stuff. But, you know, 5-6 years ago, you would have said, you know, like there's a path, there's a way, there's a reason that that's happening. So
yeah. Well, and you mentioned the book, The Gap of the Game, which of course, I mean, I read because of your recommendation, which was very transformative for me. And basically just to kind of give listeners just a very, very brief overview of this thing. It's basically, there's two different types of thinking, gap thinking and gain thinking. And what I realized through reading that book, Brian, was that how much of my life I was living in the gap,
Right.
and basically saying, okay, here's how far I have yet to go. And then I feel frustrated. You get down on yourself, and then you can't help but project that onto others.
Correct.
And I remember having to come to both of my boys and after reading that book and saying, I need to apologize for projecting gap thinking onto you, because of even just saying, hey, yeah, but guys, you have this much further to go. You have this much further to go. You know, keep pushing. Which, yeah, should we encourage ourselves, encourage our kids to keep pushing? Yes, to steward our gifts. We begin 100%. But what we don't often do is look at it with a gain mentality or gain type thinking, where you are looking backwards, like we said, and you're measuring backwards and saying, hey, I may not be where I want to go, but let's celebrate how far I've come.
Correct.
Right. And that, I think that was such a huge shift for me mentally. And while reading the book was great, what I found for me personally is that I'm actually almost a better auditory learner. And so listening to that book for the second time was actually even better, because it kind of firmly implanted some of those truths, into my mind. But there's also this interview with the guy who came up with the concept, right? And there was just these gold nuggets that were in that. And so that kind of that book, and I mean, and I've said thank you to you before, but I mean, that really awakened me to the importance of becoming a learner through consuming content like that, and fighting the urge that I have to be like, oh, okay, it's been a long day, I'm just going to zone out on Netflix again, or I'm going to watch this game. Now last night I was, it was a busy weekend, a lot of, and a very, very busy week. And so, okay, I'm going to go ahead and watch Sunday Night Football. Okay. And I probably should have been reading, but there is a reality, Brian, I think, but you're exactly right in saying that, you know what, if we want to continue to get better and we want to push ourselves, then let's do that. Let's make sure that we do. We are putting. So what are you doing right now to grow yourself? Like what kind of resources are you utilizing? What are you tapping into so that you can keep growing in what you're doing?
Yeah, that's good. I used to take a lot of pride in like how much I would read or how much content I would consume, church leadership or business or ministry, those personal growth books. And that was good for that season. For me, like right now, it's maybe doing more of a deeper dive and kind of like what you said with Gap in the Game, not just reading something, but then if I really got something out of it, well, let's listen to it. Let's go through my notes and let's put that into my computer. Just try to incorporate that as much as I can. That's one way. Being a part of live communities, whether that's SME here in town, or there's another group that I'm a part of every other week. Just some smaller groups where we connect on leadership stuff, business stuff. But I think being a part of, in-person live with people, where you can get called on stuff, or you're like, people can tell you that's dumb or that's not going to work, or that there is actually something there. But I think it's how to say it. It's where ideas or thoughts really get sharpened. Online is great. Virtual is good. And there's maybe less hesitation for someone to say that something's bad or good, online. But when you're living it with people, like you gotta bring it. You gotta be able to deliver when you're with folks. So I think that responsibility and just being a part of those groups has really helped. And And it's interesting. I'm sure you would say this too. Like, when people find out, or, oh, you're a pastor, or you're in ministry, or you're a person of faith, how God really tees up some really neat opportunities for those two to kind of intersect, and just, hey, can I send you a Bible? Can I pray for you? Can I invite you to church, or, check out this church. They're really good, or whatever. Cause we're all one person. Right. And so, just trying to be more, this probably shocks you, Tom, but I'm not a real big, a big, I haven't always been like a big spirit guy, right? Like spirit-led person. That's just not necessarily how I'm wired. But these last 3-4 years, especially being with John's team, it's just been, God, what do you want me to do? Who do you want me to see? What do you want me to say? That kind of thing. So,
and knowing that you don't always have to say the right thing.
right.
Right. I think there's just a lot of this pressure that we can put on ourselves, even as believers. And we talked about earlier about how, listen, whether you're in full-time ministry as a pastor, or a speaker, whatever, that's not what's important. Because when you walk with Jesus, when you are a dude that is focused on your faith and living out that faith in the marketplace, wherever you're at, which of course is the goal. I mean, after we come to Christ, it's like, now we got to go live it out.
Live it out. It's
well, we are all to be spirit-led.
correct.
And, I have a Post-it note. Literally it's this with my chicken scratch handwriting on it. That basically says, God, how do you want to use me today? And I look at it every day, because the reality is that every single one of us has multiple opportunities
Yes.
to be used by the Lord in some way or another, and it doesn't have to be this grandiose, big old vision thing that we automatically think it is, right? It really could be just, conversing with someone in the grocery aisle that just needs a good word, or just showing that their life has value, thanking people. We talked about it, recently. I was able to share at your event, Live to Lead, and talking about the importance just that affirmation plays in people's lives, and that the amount of negativity in our world, and a positive word in someone's life, absolutely just, it can change their entire day. Well, God, that's not quoting a Bible verse to them, maybe.
No.
It's not necessarily saying, hey, can I pray for you right in the grocery aisle? But it's ministering to them in the way, and being like intentional, to use a word that I've always just used to describe you, to be intentional about saying, I want to do this because this is how God would want to, this is what he want me to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. And so, so let me ask you this, Brian, because you and I have had, some similarities in our year as well, in just facing some kind of health challenges and some things with our brides, and there's a lot of those times that when you are going through, I call them storms in our life. Last year at the Men's Summit, I talked about how, we live in a world that's full of storms. We're either in a storm right now, we're coming out of a storm, or we're going into a storm. That's it, right? And so, and we've both experienced a little bit of a storm with just our spouse's health, and a lot of like head scratching moments of saying, like, what is going on? We realize how very little control we have in life, and frustrations and challenges. So what for you has been helpful in maintaining your focus on Christ individually, and then also as a couple, as you're trying to just kind of figure out the journey that you're on?
Yeah, I think we just talked about this at church yesterday, how, and this is something Pastor Doug says, like, crisis moves theology from third person to second person. And we're doing a series on Psalm 23, and in verse 4, David shifts his language from, the Lord is my shepherd, and he shifts it to you and your rod and your staff. And, ever since I was a middle schooler in church, like, quiet time and Bible time has been important. Prayer time has been important. Sometimes it's just to check the box, but those habits carry you through good times. They carry you through some maybe not so good times. And so, my prayer life's become a lot more real. You don't like to see someone that, you're so close to suffering. And,
Mhm.
you know, there's the typical, like, we're guys and you want to fix it. There's that piece of it, right? There's the chronic piece of it too. Like, what Trina's experiencing certainly isn't like our first, uh, deal with health stuff or trial stuff, but that previous times you could kind of see a way out of that storm. You could see the
Mhm.
light. This with chronic pain and stuff like that, there isn't always that end.
Mhm.
So,
Right.
and I think I was slow to picking up on how big of a deal this was for her and for us. We were on a walk last spring, and I could tell she's frustrated. I'm like, well, like, here's a coaching question for you, right? Like, magic wand, like, what do you want?
Yeah.
Like, if you could wave a magic wand, and besides being pain free, obviously, like,
Yeah.
what's the route you want to take, or what do you want us to do? Or if we had all the money in the world, what would you want to do? And she's like, well, if that's what it is, I'd like to try this. And so, okay, what does that look like, right? Doesn't mean we're committing 100%, but we're going to take some steps to
Mhm.
figure that out. And just, I've had to, I've had to be a better husband in terms of just listening and not trying to fix,
Mhm.
and trying to pick up my weight around, the house and around other stuff, and some of those shifts too. So,
Mhm.
yeah, and I wish I was quicker to understanding what was going on. I was not.
Right. Well,
So,
and basically, both our gals have been dealing with a lot of just debilitating chronic pain. And what I've found, Brian, is I mean that the amounts of time that we've come and just praying together and crying out to the Lord together. But then I also had to realize, I mean, similar, I think, to just what you're saying, is that there's still layers of selfishness that I still have to me, right?
Yeah.
And I think that that's again a constant battle because of our selfish nature that we have as human beings. But I kind of felt like I was doing pretty good, and then all of a sudden this happened, and then I'm like,
I know.
well, man, I need to just up my level of serving. I didn't know that it could go to the next
No.
level, but
I don't want to take the 501 or the 401 class or whatever.
exactly. I don't know if I need a doctorate. I could not have a master's in serving, but I think that that's such an interesting thing that you said, is that that all of these types of whether it be reading scripture, the prayer time, all of those things that we've built, into our lives. Um, you don't necessarily always know what it's preparing you for. And sometimes I feel like if we only are running to God in these times where, and he wants us to run to him with it all,
For sure.
but obviously there's times where you feel like, man, things are going so good. How much have I even prayed, and thanked the Lord or whatever? We can almost become lackadaisical with it. But then all of a sudden, when things go into crisis mode, and really we're all one diagnosis away, we're one phone call away
Exactly.
to entering, all of a sudden realizing how little control we do have. So the importance of having this ongoing reading of scripture, and I love that you've talked about like listening to scripture, and that's one of the things that we put into our lives. And Laura had gotten up earlier this morning, and so when I've gotten up, she was already, she had the scripture, going as she was getting ready, right? And for the day, and listening to scripture, that's something that we put into that we read the scripture in the morning, and then we listen to it while we get ready. Just because then it's like the double dose of just God's word.
Exactly.
And you just don't know like how that's going to evidence itself. And so it's kind of like you're doing this preparatory work. So I would say, man, if you're listening right now, things are going pretty good. Still make sure you stay alert,
Exactly.
right?
Exactly.
Make sure that you continue communicating to the Lord through prayer. Recognizing His presence throughout the day, knowing that He's with you even during those times, because He's going to be with you in the challenging times as well. But man, making that a priority every single day is such a huge thing to help keep your focus on Christ. When a storm does come.
Amen.
So
I mean, with our own kids, right? Like, we want to be with them when things are great and when things aren't so great.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
But sometimes, we don't always run to our folks or our kids don't come to us with with the great stuff. Like, yeah, we want to celebrate you too. Like,
Yeah.
that's the fun part of life. So,
Oh yeah, that's good. That's good. Okay, bro. Hey, so I want to talk a little bit about just what you enjoy doing with companies. One of my hopes is that that I can kind of help connect you and so I know that you've done a lot of certification with like DISC, and so you do a lot of DISC type training with individuals and so forth. So what I want to do is, as we get ready to eventually land this podcast plane here today, is I want you to unpack what DISC is real quickly, and then the benefits that come from knowing our personality bent and trait.
yeah. DISC is a communication personality assessment. There's lots of tools or products out there, right? There's Strength Finder, Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, and then there's all the online stuff, right? Like, what color is Tom? What kind of animal is Tom? What kind of dog would Tom? I mean, there's all kinds of tests, right? And they're really trying to do the same two things. Are you people-oriented or are you task-oriented? And then are you outgoing and extroverted with your energy, or are you a little more shy, a little more reserved with your energy? Most of us are going to be not just one of those four, right? We're going to be somewhere on the spectrum, and that's what an assessment like DISC or any of those others can really help you with. Whether it's DISC or something else, what it does for a company, a church, a family, is it gives you shared language. And we are all of a sudden given a tool where we stop making up a story about someone, and we can say, oh, well, they're doing this because maybe that's that dominant style in them, or maybe it's their compliance style or whatever. And so, whether it's a marriage or even with kids or all types of groups, it just gives you some more insight into how this person's behaving and communicating. It's not personal. 99% of the time, it's not personal. And so when I feel like some of this has been done, but there's, as there's companies, organizations that haven't done it. And it's like light bulbs go off, like, oh, my boss isn't a jerk, or, oh, this person isn't, trying to, control the room by not saying anything or withdrawing, or this person's passive aggressive because of this reason. And so that the Maxwell DISC gives you insight into how you're motivated, how to communicate with you, how to not communicate with you, what some potential growth areas are with your style. But it's really that shared language. And then we can kind of drop the tension a little bit, joke with each other, but then kind of grow from there. So,
and could someone's personality change as we get older and experiences?
I believe so. Certainly within DISC, and maybe this is a uniqueness to the Maxwell DISC as to some of the other products out there. Because the Maxwell DISC is really looking at you at work, and it's really looking at the role that you're in. And so if I join a company and I'm brand new to that position, my DISC is going to look a little bit different because I'm not comfortable. I don't know what's expected of me.
Sure.
There's maybe some stuff from childhood. When I'm under stress, it's going to impact how I show up. I know, for instance, I'm a C. That's my primary DISC style. Well, under stress, my C can jump up quite a bit. I can become snarky, sarcastic, withdrawn. I can cut with the best of them. And so I've got to be aware of that possibility, right? But I mean, I don't know. I don't quote me on that. The data maybe isn't 100% there, but I've definitely seen folks change based on the type of role or the job they're doing.
Yeah, and then their environment.
Yeah. And then some folks, are one way at work, and then at home, based on the environment, completely different. I was working with a group of engineers, mainly from Central America, South America, and they all tested real high on D&I. So that's that outgoing, dominant, active. He's like, but Brian, at home, we're all S's and C's. At home, their wives control things, and they kind of take more of a back seat. So it's interesting.
Yeah.
So,
Okay. And is that what you enjoy doing the most?
it's fun. Yeah, it's fun.
And because I mean, then you're helping people discover, how just the role that they can play, and where they fit.
Yeah, it's a I don't want to say easy, but it's a good way to help a team or help an owner or help a leader understand it's not you and it's not them, but here's what might be happening, right? And it's not 100%, doesn't take away all the personality stuff and all the, but it's a great place to start. So
Good. All right, so I want to do some of the it's count like a few of your favorites. Okay, so that's what I want you to tell us here. We're about ready to wrap this up, and but I want to know what's a couple of your favorite leadership principles that you enjoy sharing and that you strive to live by.
well, number one is you get out of stuff what you put into it, and as a faith leader or as a leader in the church, I think we've always understood that principle in every area but our faith. I think for some reason in our faith we thought like, well, God would just manifest God and we're good to go and we're not saved by our works and stuff like that. But if I want to get better at my career, I got to put time in. If I want to get better at a sport, I got to put time in. If I want to get better musically, I got to put time in. It's the same principle with your faith. If you want to maybe get better, isn't the way to say it, but have a closer walk with God, you gotta put the time in, and that's my top one. So much good stuff. One I'm learning maybe more recently since joining Maxwell team is leaders go first or connectors go first. And that's coming into a room, coming into a crowd and being that type of person who tries to notice and not be noticed. That's hard. I'm more introverted. I feel more comfortable when someone invites or welcomes, but taking that responsibility and saying, how can I be that for somebody else? Or how can I be that for a different person? So,
okay. Favorite marriage tip that you've ever been given?
Marriage tip that I've ever been given.
Or maybe that you give others.
I don't know.
But I mean, after 26 years of marriage, I mean, I'm not going to say you're expert level, but you're getting there. But
this took a while to, and there's all different types of rules out there or whatever. We've never done like a date night a week, but we never stopped dating. And when the kids were really little, it was really hard to get away for a night or two, but we always try to get away at least a night or two every year and then kind of grow from that and just making sure that we're prioritizing ourselves before, for kids and stuff like that. So, we haven't been perfect, but she's been really, really good at making sure that we did stuff and got out to stuff. I've gotten better, but I'm not wired like that. So.
Yeah. Okay. So never stop dating.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What about favorite parenting tip for people?
I don't know, man. I feel like we're still in the game.
Truthfully, right? We're always, because you never stop being parents.
Yeah.
Right. You never stop being parents.
Yeah.
And one of my, and this will give you just the time just to think about it, but one of my favorite tips right now is that you'll be parents of children, adult children, way longer than you'll be parents of little children, right? And so, especially in those teenage years where they are just driving you absolutely bonkers, and when I wish I would have learned that statement a couple of years prior, because you don't want to do anything, say anything, whatever that would damage your relationship long term with your adult children because of just a very short window of time, which when you're in it feels like it's just unending and it's so frustrating, right? But so that's probably my favorite one right now. But I'm always looking for new tips. This is why this is how I get my free coaching. This is I'm just like, okay, never stop dating. It's also free material for me to speak. But well, Brian Stroh says, an expert in the field says
something like that. Something my mom and dad did well, trans folks did well, is they were present. And we didn't, that doesn't mean 100% of the time. Like we both worked, we didn't homeschool, we didn't, do stuff like that. That's not necessarily what I'm saying, but my dad would work a full day and then come home and play ball, like, play catch. They maybe didn't show up, couldn't get to like every game, but it was a different culture, back then too. But just this consistent presence. And so like for my kids, just whether that was, you were one that kind of talked about this, was like one-on-ones with your kids and be intentional to take them out to things. And then I think just involving them in your life as best you can. Like, hey, I'm going to run to Menards. Do you want to come with or what?
Actually, no choice.
Stuff like that. I think that presence piece and what I find myself even telling ourselves, but telling other parents is, the kids are going to be okay. I think there's this, we can worry and we can be anxious and there's sometimes reasons for that, for sure. But when you've done all you can to live out the faith and live out the values and live out what's important to you, I think down the road it's going to be exciting to see where they land or how they choose that. But I think big picture, the kids are good.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's good. And that's good reassurance for parents too, because I know that's a fear that a lot of parents have, right? And just say, man, are my kids going to be okay?
Yeah.
And I just want to be okay.
Yeah.
And so that's a good word. All right, last one before we do the final word, and that is favorite story from us playing tennis together. And as you get ready to tell a story, just because I love to hear you talk about how non-tennis like I was, but I do want to paint a picture of this. Brian was a very good tennis player, still is probably.
He was okay.
Yeah, you're pretty good. You and your brother, and Doug, and the Larson brothers,
Yeah.
and then there was and we needed to fill out the team. Is really what happened. And Jeff Nelson, who now works with us here at RESGEN, of course. He was the tennis coach at the University of Sioux Falls, was working in development at the time.
Yep.
And I was just trying to piecemeal my payments
Right,
together
exactly.
to make tuition work. And I knew how to hit a tennis ball, kind of. And so Jeff offered me a $1,000 participation grant to play tennis.
In the late 90s, that's huge, right?
That was a huge amount in 1996 through 1998. But meanwhile, I'm put on a tennis team with people that actually are scholarship recipients because you'd actually played tennis.
I don't know. Doug and Matt were. I think we got the same participation grant.
Yeah. Well, then you got a bad deal because you definitely deserve more money.
Jeff's
than me.
no dummy, right? So
he's like, I just need time to fill out the team. I think Brian will say yes for this. So I just would love for you to tell whatever story you want, what your favorite story about us playing tennis together. And so the world is your oyster right now.
Well, man, what maybe you didn't have in what you say would be ability, you sure made up for in competitiveness and hustle and that desire to win. And I don't know if your listeners or viewers will get the story here, but Northwestern College in Orange City, Iowa, I'm sure they've redone the courts. I think they have, but when you and I were playing, it was like Legoland.
Yeah,
I mean, the courts were like these, I'd never played on them before.
It's like waffles.
Yeah, it was like plastic type thing.
So weird.
And so that was a challenge for all of us that we hadn't quite experienced. And you were in a really competitive match, I remember, singles match. And this ball comes flying in, into your court, on your side of the court during a pretty good rally. And you miss the shot and you're frustrated. And you're like, oh, come on. Like just kind of throwing your hands up. I mean, we didn't mean to make fun of you, but we're like, dude, just call a let. Like, you can replay that point. And he's like, what's a let?
Yeah. I really didn't know. I really didn't know the rules. I figured that was the story you're going to tell. And to be clear, I love how you framed that. Said what you lacked in tennis ability, you made up in competitiveness.
Yes.
And what you mean by is a little Jim McEnroe air. Because I do remember breaking a couple rackets.
As did I. Not proud of that, but
and I was, I believe the words were when the ball came flying on the court was, "That's bullcrap." I think it's really what I said. I think
you're actually right now.
I said, "That's bullcrap," and then you guys are like, "Just call a let," and I'm like, "What the heck's a let?" So as I said, I was on a participation grant. I did not know the rules.
I think you won that one though, if I remember right. Pretty sure you pulled it out.
Yeah, I don't know. That might have been the the only match I won in history of my not so illustrious tennis career. But, well, brother, hey, listen, I'm so grateful for you. I'm grateful for our friendship. I love just doing
Thanks
the
so
journey
much.
together. As you know, at the end of every pod, we do something called the final word, just kind of 30 to 90 seconds, whatever you feel like the Lord is laying on your heart to send listeners off with. So what's your final word?
Not to like puff you up here, but when I was at your men's lunch a month or two ago, that event that you had, and you were talking about the summit and talking about how this summit has the potential to be the biggest faith gathering for men in the United States. Like guys, be a part of that. Like the Maxwell, we want to be in the room. Like, that's, we talked about that. We want you in that room. And when I'm talking to people in the area, I mean, even not in the area, it's like, how can we get you, connected to that? And I know you've got people flying in from all over and bussing from all over. But I think hearing that for me was like, oh, that, I don't know. Like, I know it's big, and not that it has to be big, but the impact and just the season that we're in as a culture and as a country and what's happening. Just really looking forward to what's going to happen, not only on that day, but from that day. Right. So,
well, thank you. Thank you, brother. I'm just so grateful for all the support that you give me throughout the years, encouragement. And
absolutely.
And, in Maxwell, this is not something that is going to be new information, but they talk about the power of borrowed belief. And that sometimes it's the belief that other people have in you that you lean on, because we all have these moments where like, oh man, can I do this or whatever? And that's the strength of having people in your world, in your relational world, that believe in you and that you can lean on, that can encourage you in those moments that are just kind of, you feel like, I don't have what it takes, or they're dark moments in your life or whatever. And so you've always been someone that's been a person that I was always able to borrow belief from. So I'm so grateful. Awesome. So thanks for your friendship. Thanks for being here today. If people want to connect with you, like whether it be because they just want to like get to know you more,
sure,
they want you to come into their company, do a disc assessment, do a leadership game, do all the things you do, how do they connect with you?
Yeah. brianstroh.net is the website. Pretty active on LinkedIn. And then, locally, just stop by Hillcrest, 4301 East 26th Street. So
yeah, that's right. That's right. All right, brother. Hey, thanks for being with me today.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Well, friends, that'll do it for another episode of the RESGEN Giving Life podcast. I hope you enjoyed my conversation with Brian Stroh today. If you'd like to connect with him more, as he said, be sure to head to Brian Stroh. That's Stroh, by the way. So brianstroh.net, and then schedule a time to visit with him over the phone or in person from that website. Of course, as he mentioned, also, you can also find him at Hillcrest Church right here in Sioux Falls. Don't forget to head to resgen.org, not just because Brian told you to, but because we really do want to encourage you to be in the room for the Men's Summit this year, February 21st at the Denny Sanford Premier Center. Coming here from John C. Maxwell, Tim Tebow, other great communicators that are going to help you level up your vision and align your vision with God's vision for your life. And then who are you going to bring with you? Because, man, we need your help in filling it. And then also our date night comedy event at the downtown Washington Pavilion here in Sioux Falls. A great night of comedy, love, and learning for you and your spouse. All right, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time on the Giving Life podcast. Until then, continue being men whose life in Christ gives life to others. We'll see you soon.